So, Pacman, you are 2 for 2 on projects that have completely redefined metas inside of the crypto industry. Blur really just changed the game in terms of NFT trading and the whole NFT marketplace ecosystem. Blast has now done the same again because there is now a new focus on natively yield-bearing layer 2s, which was a narrative, a theme, a construction completely novelly introduced by Blast. 2 for 2 on projects that redefine the industry is a pretty unique place to be. So just a little bit of just like, who is Pacman? How does he not miss? Where did you come from? Who are you?
Yeah, really appreciate the kind words. So just for like a brief overview, I got my start in Silicon Valley around 9 years ago. I started off as a software engineer, working at a company called Teespring. I actually had a bit of an atypical journey. So I went to Teespring when I was in high school, and I ended up dropping out to work there for a year out of high school after my sophomore year. And after
Dropping
that
out of high
year,
school. We're not talking
yeah,
college. You dropped out of high school. Okay.
yeah, I dropped out of high school. So I was 16 at the time. Yeah, it's fuzzy now. It's crazy how the time flies, but 16 at the time. And then I went over to Silicon Valley and I stayed. And I ended up actually starting a company right after Teespring. And we went through, it was called Strong Intro. We went through Y Combinator in the Winter 16 batch. I was the youngest like batchmate at the time. I was 17. Went through that experience. And then I really wanted to go to college after. Ended up going to MIT. And I studied math with computer science there for about 2 years, where I met my co-founder, Anthony. And we basically just immediately started hitting it off. We started building together. He graduated a year early. I ended up receiving the Teal Fellowship to go and drop out again after my sophomore year, coincidentally.
Serial dropper outer.
You just keep rugging schools, man.
Yeah, I know. They, but MIT actually has a really nice program where it's like you can drop out and just come back, like even when you're 50. So I would like to go back at some point, just for the fun of it.
To drop out a third time.
Exactly. Maybe I can drop out of the MEng program. But I left, and Anthony and I, we started our first business, which was Namebase, and that was a really niche company built on a blockchain called Handshake. It was like a decentralized domain name blockchain. And we ran that for around 3 years, and we sold it at the end of 2021 to Namecheap. And then basically immediately after that, Anthony and I, we started Blur, which is the NFT marketplace for pro traders. And we've been contributing to Blur for the past, 2.5 years now. And we, a few months ago, released Blast, which is our latest project. It's a L2 with native yield. And so that's kind of like the short summary of my professional history.
Well, when you were in high school, I'm curious, Pacman, just so we can get some insight into you and how your mind works. What gave you the conviction to drop out in your sophomore year?
Yeah, it was actually like super, super easy. So I had discovered Hacker News, which is like a very popular, it's kind of like Reddit, but for just like nerds. Discovered that when I was 13, and I basically just became super obsessed with Silicon Valley. Read all of Paul Graham's articles, was really into that, and my dream, like my number one goal, was just starting a company and going through Y Combinator. Like that was like the only thing that I wanted to do, and I got really lucky when I was in sophomore year of high school. I discovered Teespring, which was this like custom t-shirt like printing startup, and they were like doing incredibly well. Their founder had written a blog post on how they got to $1 million in revenue in 8 months, which was like crazy at the time. And I became super fascinated with that, and I actually wanted to go and like build a competitor to Teespring in Boston. And I was like a high school student, and I ended up coding up a competitor to Teespring. And then when I got around and finished a clone, I was like, wait a second, like there's a lot more to building a business than just making a website. So I ended up emailing the CEO, and I shared what I had built, and they hired me as an intern. And then after working as an intern, they were just growing like crazy at the time. So they really needed more hands, and everyone at Teespring was like really, really professional, just like really exceptional quality in terms of builders. And I just felt like it was like a good mentoring opportunity. So I asked them if I could work full time, and they agreed. And the rest was history from there.
Do you advise this to any particular high school student that might be listening, or is this just a road less traveled that is only suitable for a few?
Yeah, that's tough. There's a lot you miss from like not going to school. I'm not anti-school. I actually really love school, especially college. I think it's like incredible. And I think high school too is like so formative for your like social and emotional development. So I'm actually like really bullish on school overall. I would say if you like really want it though, it's like it's not really something that I can like advise. It's more so just like if you want it, you're gonna do it. And I wouldn't like tell someone to do it or not to do it. It's really just like a matter of like what they want.
And what did you want about this life? What attracted you to Silicon Valley, to Paul Graham posts that you read, and now later into crypto?
Yeah, I think just the ability to build things that are really massive was something that was just incredible to me. The idea that you could have, the classic Silicon Valley stories, you have these like kids who are coding up a website in their dorm room and then they go and build like the next big thing. That was just like so incredible to me. I was like, how is that even possible? It seemed like a pipe dream. And the closer I got to it, the more I was like, oh my God, this is like real and you can actually do this. And it was just like, I was just like super addicted. I was like, I wanted it no, like more than anything. It just seemed fascinating to me and being able to actually like go into that world and, live and work in Silicon Valley. I actually got to spend a lot of time in there's like early in the Teal Fellowship, which also like funded Vitalik. They actually had this like house called Mission Control where they hosted a lot of the Teal Fellows. So I got to like hang out there and meet a bunch of other like young kids who had dropped out and to start things. And they actually had funny stories of Vitalik staying there in the early days and trying to like give people Ethereum as compensation for letting them crash on their couch.
Really?
And everyone was like, "We don't want your Ethereum." Yeah, and nobody wanted the Ethereum, and then everyone regretted that afterwards, of course. But yeah, it's just like really cool, being in that ecosystem, just surrounded by builders. There's really nowhere else like it. I feel like it's a little bit different now, but like definitely in that time, like 2014, like that era was just like really incredible for Silicon Valley.
What do you think about this life motivates you so hard? Is it like building towards something that's larger than yourself? Is it like, to me, the whole kind of Pacman ecosystem between Blur and Blast, there's a little bit of like world building going on there. Like, what about this life is so like motivating and compelling for you?
Yeah, I think it's like a very like visceral thing. I think building things is like really satisfying. And I think if you're gonna build something, you should try to build the most significant thing you can build. Actually there's someone that I know, he works at like OpenAI, and he says something about like, people basically could increase their ambition a lot, like almost like across the board. If you talk to anyone, you could have them like 10x their ambition, and that's probably like still like beneath where their ambition should be in terms of like what they can actually accomplish. I think my perspective is just like, yeah, like I really enjoy building things. And when I think that there's, problems and opportunities, I want to go after it. And specifically, I really want to go after like the biggest problems and the biggest opportunities. I'm not particularly interested in like smaller things. I think it's like totally fine to go after that, but it's just like, I think for me, I really just want to go after like the biggest things. And, I just throw all my energy into it.
So when you get a Teal Fellowship, do you get to meet Peter Thiel, or like how does that work? What's the selection process like? And just like
Yeah, it's
just
pretty basic. They just like you do interviews, you chat with like the other fellows. If you've ever done like a YC application, it feels like very similar to that. But a little bit more process, but very, very similar to that. You do get to meet Peter Thiel. At least, like I did. It was cool. It was a cool conversation, but he doesn't really spend a lot of time with the fellows. It's kind of more like, he brands the kids and then gives them 100K, and then he's just like doing his thing. So I only had one conversation with him. But I think the biggest benefit is actually just being able to hang out with the other fellows, because they do a really good job of just kind of like curating a group of some of like the most like motivated people of that age bracket. Kind of like in the US, kind of in the world. So I think just that network alone is where most of the value is.
I was gonna say that's like a good portion of the value if you're going to college, going to university too. Is that sort of that selection effect? And I guess you sort of get that with a Teal Fellowship then.
Yeah, I think you do get a lot. I would say it's different though. Like MIT is the densest network of high caliber engineering talent that I've, ever seen in my life. Like when my peers there, they're like way, way smarter than me technically. And you just go there and every kid there they can build anything. Like there's really nothing that's like rocket science there. Like not even rocket science is rocket science. Everything is learnable. You get access to, the people that like invented the technologies that we use today. I think going there is it's something that's like unparalleled. The Teal Fellowship, you kind of get that more for like entrepreneurial people, but that's different than like engineering density. So I think they're both like very valuable for different reasons.
Well, I know we want to focus a little bit on more than a little bit on this episode on Blast and that whole ecosystem, but kind of like as I intro to you, I said Pacman is 2 for 2 on projects that have redefined the industry. How surprised would we be, should we be, if there was a third, or do you already have ideas that you're thinking of?
Let me just say, I would be surprised. I would be surprised
You
if
would
there
be
was
surprised.
a third. Yeah, I was surprised that there was a second, actually. That was never the starting intention. That one was more like very fortuitous. In some ways, I'm happy to kind of like share more about that. But yeah, I don't really go out and just like I'm not like actively like, oh, I want to start like 20 different projects. It's just like Blast was something that I felt needed to be built, and so I started working on that. I would be surprised if there was a third, but anything could happen.
Pacman, we started this episode with calling you Pacman, and I got to think that's not your actual name. Can you tell us at least your nation state name? Let's call it. Where did that name come from? Why do you call yourself Pacman? Why do others call you Pacman? I think you started with a Blur, sort of pseudonymous, and now you're not. Can you tell us the story of how that happened as well?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Pacman is just my pseudonym. I'm Dox. My real name is Tieshan. It's Tieshan in Mandarin. And actually adopting it initially, it was more so about like optionality than anything else. I had a conversation with Anish. He was at Paradigm at the time, but now he's I think he's on like the founding team of Ritual. And he was really deep into Ethereum. So I was just like, hey, like, what do you think are the pros and cons of doxing versus not doxing? And he was saying how he actually in retrospect probably would have started like Anon if he could. And he said at minimum you always have the optionality to dox. And it's like a free option just sounded great to me. So I decided to go with Pacman as a nickname, and yeah, it's just stuck. One of the nice things about it that I didn't realize at the time was having a name that people know how to pronounce is actually like a huge advantage. Normally when I introduce myself, like with my real name, it's like, they're spending 5 minutes just trying to figure out how to pronounce the name. Just being able to say, hey, I'm Pac-Man, and then that's the end of the conversation is actually extremely nice. I never really realized that benefit before.
Yeah. And so how did you become, was it your choice to become sort of quote unquote doxed, or how did that happen?
Yeah, it was, my intention from the beginning was basically to docs. We never really went hard on the like anon mentality. Like if you were to actually try to be anon, like it takes a lot of work. You have to be like really, really thorough, and it's like, yeah, you have to be very, very thorough. It's almost always going to get out eventually. Like even the anons in the space, like a lot of people know who they actually are, behind the scenes. So for us, it was, and for me specifically, it was never something that I intended to do forever. It just felt like a convenient thing to do at the time. And then after, I think I doxed after the Blur governance launched, along with the token, and it just felt like it was getting enough attention at the time that I might as well, go and kind of share with the world who I was then. So that kind of came. That was where it came from. But
So
it was always intended.
You
Yeah,
self-doxed.
you did it yourself before somebody else did it to you.
Yeah, exactly. I like to be able to do it, like on my own terms. Just like if I'm gonna dox, I might as well do it myself.
Now, has that changed anything for you? Like in a post-doxed world, is it easier? Is it better? Or it's just you really haven't noticed anything?
Actually, one time I got recognized in San Francisco, which was kind of like scary to me. I was like, never really expected that ever. So, besides that, I don't think it really has made that much of an impact. I would say I do, like, there are a lot of benefits to being pseudo. It's cool just being able to like navigate the world without people knowing, and just being able to I think it's really just like an optionality thing, like having the optionality to divulge that information with someone that you trust, like when you want. That's like really cool versus like when you're doxxed, just like everyone already knows by default. And I think in many ways it's like you can get more authentic interactions with people if they don't know your background versus when they know your background, it's just like by necessity, like that's just going to change how they think about the situation. So I think there's actually like a lot of benefits to being anon or pseudo. But like the docs is like the default state for like almost every builder in the world like ever. So it's like not that bad.
I wonder how much of this too becomes like sort of a persona that you wear, almost like Peter Parker has Spider-Man, right? He's got a superhero outfit and a superhero name, and is sort of a different person as Spider-Man versus Peter Parker. I don't know if this has become that way for you, Pacman, but Pacman definitely has a name in the crypto industry, I would say, and sort of a narrative associated with that. As David kept mentioning, we're going to get to these projects like. Blur has been an incredibly successful project. Blast has been an incredibly successful project. You as kind of like a young wonder kid, kind of like founder, building these things and seeing the vision for them, making them so successful. I'm curious what you think the perception of Pacman is, kind of like the narrative. How do you think the industry sees you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it really depends on who you ask. I think if you ask, crypto natives who are like on chain, I think that they would think of me favorably. Maybe they've even used Blur, maybe they've used Blast. I think they, would probably enjoy that as users. I think if you talk to, different crowds, maybe they think I'm like reckless or something, based on what was built. So I think it really depends.
Are you reckless?
I would say no. Although I think there's definitely a perception of that. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a perception of that. But in general, I don't like taking risk, which might seem
Where do you think
weird.
the perception comes from so far?
I think it's just like optics. I think I would have to share like if you like list out like specific names, I might be able to like try to like put my head in their put my head in their like mindset and then like think about from that perspective. But I think that yeah, I think just like optically it's like really easy to like FUD ultimately. And what I've noticed is like a lot of FUD really comes from like optics more than like fundamentals. So I think that's really what it comes down to. Usually when you get into the fundamentals, like you're gonna find a different story than what you see just like on the surface level on like crypto Twitter. And that's just like not just for me, but something across the board that I've observed is that when you talk to people who are like really deep into a system and an ecosystem, they usually have a very different perspective than when you talk to people who just kind of understand things at a surface level or maybe like don't understand like the technical underpinnings of a thing. And so there's kind of like different levels of narratives based on like how deep you go. So I think like on the surface level, that's probably where it comes from.
If you enjoyed all of that, then you'll absolutely love the Bankless newsletter. Join over 300,000 fellow readers, all for free. Click below to sign up.